Hey folks, welcome back. Chris in Central Pennsylvania. Look, this propaganda effort by the South African government as an effort to refute the refugee program, of course, it's been lied about for the past year by South African media, by Western media, by all kinds of social media content creators, most of whom have not much in the way of a support or following. Earlier this week, while I was ill, and I remain ill, a story came out from the News 24 website falsely claiming that thousands of South African refugees have returned to South Africa. In fact, thousands of South Africans have returned to South Africa, as they do each and every year from all over the world, and thousands more leave the country. The story took a handful of cases of people who've been living in the United States for decades and decided to go back to South Africa for whatever reasons and determined that thousands of refugees are returning. Patently false. They quoted Leon Schreiber, who used bogus statistics to make erroneous claims about people returning, trying to paint a picture that South Africa is actually heaven on earth, that things are smooth and wonderful there. Well, I don't like to make videos in response to other content creators, but when you spend 3 minutes listening to nothing but absolute blatant lies and propaganda, that can't stand. So this video is in response to a video entitled "Trump's Beloved White South Africans Refugees," with quotation marks, "returning home in droves," in all caps, from something called the Humanist report with 772,000 subscribers. 772,000 subscribers. Trump's beloved white South African refugees returning home in droves. Well, first off, refugees, this quotation mark, for these leftist hate wankers that like to make these videos and don't understand law, the Immigration Nationality Act clearly defines what a refugee is. Every South African who's come here qualifies as a refugee under the Immigration Nationality Act of 1980, and the standards of the Immigration Nationality Act conform with international guidelines on what a refugee is. A refugee is not a brown or black person fleeing from a war. It can be, but a refugee is a person who meets several criteria, including fleeing religious, political, or racial persecution. So let's address this video. In the first 3 minutes, the first comment out of the guy's mouth is genocide, and he used a quote when Trump speaks last year. Well, genocide isn't germane. Whether Trump talks about genocide, which he mostly doesn't, it's mostly the media. Only 3 occasions Trump has mentioned the word without the media prompting him to say it. Whether he mentions it or not isn't germane. Genocide is not the basis for the refugee program. Racial persecution is the basis. So if you're going to make a video, the Humanist Report, actually do your research instead of just writing some garbage that has 375,000 views. It's pathetic. Next, he accuses Trump of being complicit in non-existent genocide in Gaza. There's no genocide in Gaza. The Palestinians, the Arabs, have not been wiped out. The 1.8 million Palestinians living in Israel have not been harmed. They vote, they work, they pay taxes, they serve in the Knesset, they serve in the IDF, they serve in the police, they serve in the judiciary, they run businesses, they live perfectly fine. The millions of Palestinians living in Jordan have not been touched. Those living in Kuwait have not been touched. There's no genocide or effort to wipe out. There's no definition. This is simply propaganda. Number 3, he said that Trump punished South Africa for the genocide by cutting off assistance. Wrong. The executive order does not say that, and he shows a screenshot of the executive order and then lies to his viewers. The reason that the assistance was cut off is South Africa is violating its own constitution with the Expropriation Without Compensation Act. And more importantly, it has acted against the interests of the United States. And it's done so for 2.5 decades. And I've run through this dozens of times about all the egregious offenses that the ANC has committed against our interests, our friends, our partners, and allies. So I'm not going to belabor that point now. But it has nothing to do with genocide. That is not why assistance was cut. This is a lie. And using the executive order to hoodwink and mislead his followers. Shame on you. Then he uses a bogus report from David Baer posted on Twitter to claim that not a single refugee other than white South Africans came to the U.S. and he picks dates for this fiscal year. Unfortunately, this again is a lie. If you actually read the report, which I've done, 3 Afghans came in this fiscal year to Colorado. 3. Now, that means that most of the refugees were South Africans. But here's the other problem with his lie. They weren't white South Africans. They were white, they were colored, they were Indian, and they were black. And I have interviewed Indians, coloreds, and blacks on this program, yet this propaganda gets to be spread by channel 775,000 followers, 375,000 views on a video that's nothing but outright lies to spread racial hatred and attack the Trump administration, completely ignoring the facts because they're inconvenient. Yes, Trump cut off the refugee program to the rest of the world, but he didn't reserve it exclusively for white South Africans. That's a lie. He reserved for South Africans suffering from unjust racial persecution, which includes coloreds, Indians, and even some black South Africans. Now, then he launches into this nonsense of talking about all the entitlements and benefits that refugees get. He said they treat white immigrants very differently than they treat black and brown ones. Once again, more lies. The entitlements and benefits are a matter of law and a matter of programming. And their benefits given to Afghans and Congolese and Uyghurs and Rohingya and people from all over the world for decades. We've relocated 2.7 million people under this program since 1980. And they've all received these benefits to one degree or another. And most of them were white, except for the Ukrainians and some people from Yugoslavia. So this is another lie. All this in the first 3 minutes, folks. Then he says they offered these refugees cash assistance as well as housing. And he said if the same benefits were offered to real refugees, black or brown refugees, the right-wingers would lose their effing minds. Actually, folks, we spend $8.9 billion in fiscal year 2024 to relocate refugees to the United States, almost all of whom were black and brown, almost all of whom got this assistance. So the right wing didn't lose their mind. $9 billion a year. What do you mean the right wing will lose its crap in its pants and foam at the mouth? 3 minutes of absolute propaganda. Now, I'm going to have to start making multiple videos to refute the rest of the sludge coming out of this website. This is unbelievable. I can't believe that this is allowed. This is pure propaganda. None of it supported by facts. You don't have to believe me. Go look at the report from the USCIS that gives a number of refugees who come over. Now, it doesn't break it down by race, but you can watch my videos and you can see South Africans in America who are brown, who are white, who are black, who are Indian, who are colored, that have come over here. You can also read the correct information in the executive order. What it says, not what these people tell you it says. Unbelievable, folks. It's not shocking. This is why the world's so screwed up and why people believe nonsense. The program is not for white South Africans. The program is not for farmers. Just sick of these lies. This is the first and many that are going to be done to expose these fraudulent stories that are being put out there on a channel with nearly 750,000 subscribers, 375,000 views. Mine will be hidden because of the shadow banning, no doubt. It's a shame because I've offered you the facts. You decide. Cheers.